Hi, this is the Technology RideCast. I'm Mark Farley, and our special guest today is Gene Banman. How you doing, Gene?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, and Gene is the CEO at DriveScale.
It's a big data infrastructure company.
You're doing work with people that have been using Cloudera, Hortonworks, MapR. It's a lot different than what I'm used to seeing.
Our architecture is really for very large big data installations, and we figured out a way to disaggregate the disk drives from the compute and give the same performance and the same economics of commodity servers with a much more flexible environment.
That way you can scale up however many drives that you need to support a cluster, and you don't have to have a mismatch of CPU to drives, right?
That's right, and whenever your applications flow changes, as they often do, and you find you're compute bound, you can add more compute, or if you need to go upgrade all those CPUs to the latest Intel chips, you can upgrade all those CPUs and not have to throw your disk drives away.
When you talk about large clusters, it's
right.
a lot different than maybe what a lot of people think. If people think about Microsoft clusters, maybe 2 or 4 nodes, or Oracle clusters, how many nodes do your customers have?
Between 200 and 2,000 nodes. 200 is kind of on the low end. Some of the big web type companies have clusters of 6,000 or even 15,000 nodes. That's not our typical prospect, but that's the kind of technology that we're supporting. People that have such large clusters need to buy the cheapest hardware they can get, and that has been commodity servers with disk drives direct attached.
So what kind of customers are looking at your product?
So there's really 2 kinds of folks in our pipeline. That's a large end user with a large cluster. What you may not realize is that there's a lot of web services that are vertical applications, like advertising technology companies or medical analytics companies that gather data either from their customers or from the market and do analysis of that and then sell the results of that analysis over the web to their customers.
You know, when people think about big data, there was a lot of hype over it for a long time, and Gartner talked about it going through, you know, at some point the trough of disillusionment. Where do you think we are in that curve right now, Gene?
We're moving up to the plateau of utilization, I think they call it, or the plateau of efficiency. Cloudera is going public. They just filed their S1 with 1,000 customers. We just came from Strata Hadoop show. There were over 4,000 attendees. There are over 200 presentations ranging from big data analytics to deep learning. Hadoop really is one of the platforms for deep learning, AI. That's the hot new thing.
The people that run your product, operate your product, what job titles do they have, and what's the scope of the work that they're doing?
The typical title is Director of IT Operations or VP of IT Operations. They're responsible for putting the hardware in place to run these big data environments. Their customers are the data analytics data scientists who are actually running the analysis against the data. They have to respond to the changing needs of these data scientists. What's happened is there's more and more analytical tools coming along, and the same set of data now is being analyzed, you know, this way, that way, and the other way through different tools. And so we've gone from a situation where most clusters were running their CPUs at about 10%, just nursemaiding the disk drives, to clusters that are absolutely compute bound. In the traditional way of putting these clusters together, that just meant they had to just go buy more servers, even though they didn't actually need more storage. With our technology, they can go upgrade their CPUs and leave their data in place. They can add more compute nodes without adding more disk drives, and just keep their infrastructure running very efficiently and effectively.
When you talk about Cloudera and Hortonworks, I think a lot of people think, well, that's something that they need to do, you know, in Google's cloud or in AWS or something like that. Why would somebody look at doing it on premises with your technology as opposed to just renting space?
Cloud is a great place to start your clusters up, to run experiments, but when you get into a production situation where you really need to run your analytics continuously to run your business, the AWS or Azure bills really start to stack up. Basically, you're paying for that hardware every 4 months. You can save a lot of money by not running in the cloud. Okay,
so let's say you're a customer that's running Hadoop in one of the big cloud service providers, one of the hyperscalers, and you know, they've got a set of tools that they're using. Can they use the same tools on your product that they're using right now?
Yeah, so we just did a plugin for Cloudera Director and for Hortonworks Cloudburst. You can now provision clusters on-prem just like you would in the cloud.
So when somebody buys your solution, they're buying JBOD off the shelf, they're buying servers off the shelf. What do they get from you?
A little 1U box, which is a SAS to Ethernet bridge that allows you to connect your commodity SAS JBODs to the top-of-rack switch. And then we sell software that allows you to configure those drives to the nodes and create clusters out of these pools of commodity resources. We don't want to get into the computer business. We don't want to sell you, hardware. But we did need to make this one little bit of hardware to connect the commodity JBODs to the switch to allow this all to work. Our primary value added is in the software that orchestrates and composes these clusters, these servers and clusters out of the resources.
Speaking of orchestration, do you have customers that are orchestrating your technology through their software?
So we built our GUI on top of a RESTful API, and so all of the things that you can do on the GUI can also be done through scripts. And so indeed, after they figure out how the GUI works and what the capabilities are, they're mainly managing the systems through scripting.
So when you do your testing in-house, is that how you do it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so eating the dog food.
That's right.
Gene, this is great. Thanks
you
for coming along. Yeah, it's been
fun.
really fun learning about your product.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.